All right, welcome to this episode of After Hours where I'm going to be writing a script in real time. I am going to be plagiarizing myself. I'm going to be writing a script that I had wrote 8 years ago or so. The reason why is because I think it's a tight, solid script. It's a short film, so it's only 5 pages, so you don't have to be sitting here for hours and hours. And this script has some legitimacy behind it because the end product, the short film, which was directed by my friend Jacob, I'll put some links into his website and Instagram. It won several awards. It made it into the Atlanta Film Festival, which is a fairly big festival. It's maybe like not necessarily like a tier one, like a Sundance or South by, but it's like tier two, which is like pretty solid. Most people get into like tier three and tier four festivals, which I can talk more about later at another time. But the main thing is solid script. I've always gotten really, really good feedback on the script itself in terms of the end product. This is also going to give you a good idea of the general formatting, how to pace and really like describe scenes, how to work in dialogue, and how you can really craft a narrative in such a tight space of time. Even in terms of restrictions, it's two characters, one location. So we're going to get to it relatively quick. I am not going to over explain too many things. This isn't a lesson in terms of rules of screenwriting. So I'll kind of make little notes here and there, or I'll articulate them as we go, but I'm going to keep it relatively light. You just need to kind of see what's happening or hear what's happening if you're just kind of a little busy right now and you're using this listening to this in the background. So obviously, if you don't have any screenwriting software, get yourself a hold of that. Four options that you have that are really good are Fade In, Highland 2, Celtics, and the one that I am using right now, which is Writer Duet. I believe Celtics is still free, and then you can get an upgrade for a Pro, which you can pay for, obviously. Writer Duet is free. You get an upgrade for Pro. I pay for Pro. Highland 2 and Fade In are both pay for, but they're really affordable, and these are all great. I believe all of these export into Final Draft file type. Final Draft is the one that was like most popular years ago and was considered the quote unquote industry standard. It's no longer anymore. Nobody gives a shit. And also it's too expensive. It's overpriced, I should say. Maybe not too expensive. You can still afford it, but it's just overpriced and glitchy, and it's just there's more issues with it than non-issues. But if you want to use Final Draft, go ahead. I'll still judge you for it or whatever. It's a joke, of course. Now, of course, once you get your writing software opened up and you kind of get a feel for the program and you can kind of like, get through the basics of like, of the flow of the program, the software, however you want to word it, let's get to our title page. Now, if you're on Writer Duet, obviously you're going to hit File, Start a New Project. Usually when you open it up, especially if it's your first time, it's going to automatically have you start a new project, and it'll start you on a blank page like this. Take that out. And then for Writer Duet, you would just go to your open title page under the file section, and you can get your title page and you can fill it in. It's already templated, so it'll say like name a title by name and then whatever. So Eden by Zach Quinones. And then we're going to go to the main document. And the thing is with this title page, you can close it out. It's still always going to be there. You just open it back up again, but you can close it out in the tab. But I'm going to keep it open just for the sake of aesthetics. All right, so let's get right to this. So this screenplay is about the restrictions that I had, mainly because Jacob didn't have a budget. It was his first short film, or first film really anything. He was like 2 characters, 1 location, something under 10 minutes that I can shoot literally in one night. So, a lot of times when you are given restrictions like that, it actually is very helpful because it cuts out a lot of fat and unnecessary complications that you may impose on yourself in a story. If you have total freedom, sometimes we get carried away and we add way too much shit. So having those restrictions, it kind of like helped me zero in on a story. Now, as far as creating stories, I always recommend just pulling from real life. It doesn't have to be your real life. This story is obviously not based on my life. It's about a married man with a prostitute. I've never been married, never been with a prostitute, at least that I know of. So, yeah, I mean, like, I've talked to so many people when I've been on flights around the country or when I go to bars by myself. I've met married men, married women who have all done kind of like questionably ethical things, I guess you could say, or maybe not questionably ethical, depending on the context. But just subjectively speaking, they're when you get to talk to people and you get to know them and they feel comfortable with you, they tend to tell you a lot, especially if they think they're never going to see you again. So, that I think that's an important thing to establish as a writer is, I'm naturally by default introverted, but I still am sociable. And being introverted doesn't mean like you don't like being around social events or anything like that. It's really just about you would prefer just like a night at home by yourself first before anything else. Um, but I digress. So I kind of thought about just different conversations that I've had, and eventually I settled on, oh well, I've talked to a few people, married people who have like either cheated on or they had, they've been with prostitutes or some sort. Also married women who have hired, you know, men to, male prostitutes. So I always thought that was an interesting thing, and I figured, okay, what's something that makes a good story? And it all comes down to conflict, and there's external and internal conflict. You can do both, but it's a short film, so we're going to focus on internal conflict here. So yeah, now let's start writing the script. So you have a little bit of background. I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm basically just plagiarizing the script off of my phone and onto here so you guys can see it, just see the flow. So fade in, then we're going to go interior. So you want to go, as you can see, interior or exterior. Interior obviously means inside, exterior means outside. So if I wanted to start this outside the motel, I would have put exterior motel. And even if I wanted to be more specific, I could put parking lot. But as the script has, we start, sorry, I don't know why I have to burp. We start inside the motel, and then I set the time of day. You could do day, night, or morning. Those are really the only three you need. If you want to get creative about it, um, you could say something like late night. Ooh. One thing I do too is I put like dusk, or I'll put dawn. But let's do night. Okay, so that's generally how you set up a script. The fade in isn't mandatory. People use it, some people don't. But we're going to start inside a motel. And now we're going to start with our action / general descriptions. And this is essentially the part where you have to walk the fine line of communicating information to the reader that's both data and gray. And what I mean by data is zeros and ones, like in a computer, where it's very matter of fact. There's no flowery language. You don't get creative with it. And then the gray aspect of it, which is where you do get a little bit creative. You maybe flower up the prose a bit. So you have to walk that fine line. If you do too much of the gray writing, is what I call it, it can be overkill, and you're not really like instructing too much. You're writing a novel more than anything. At the same time, if you do too much of the data type writing, it gets very boring and bland, and your script isn't that exciting. So I always recommend a combination of the two. But I would focus more or less on just being very pragmatic, doing the data version, and just focusing on just making sure the instructions are there for the actors and for the director and the scene. Okay, so sometimes when you introduce a character, you capitalize them, all caps. So you'll see right here, a man sits at the edge of the bed wearing only his unbuttoned dress pants with his head drooped down. So this is like overwriting. I wrote the script 8 years ago, just remember that. This is a little bit of overwriting because I'm giving too much instruction in what's happening. So what I could usually do, man sits at the edge of the bed, let's say pants unbuttoned and seemingly tired, exhausted. That would probably be more, that gives a little bit more range of freedom for the actor. But that's essentially how I would rewrite that. And I'm not going to be doing this the whole time. I'm just kind of letting you know I'm aware that the writing here isn't like top tier. But yeah, with his head drooped down, all of that. It's still not like, this is fine as it is still. But me now, as I currently am, I'm not going to be so micromanagey with that. Or I'll say it in a much more smoother way. So we get into the description of this person. He has a body of a brute, thick as wood and heavy as stone. His name is Rick. Okay. Again, this is like I'm being a little bit flowery. I could probably just put he has a body of a brute. His name is Rick. Or I can go into other things like he has thick hands or whatever. So these are all things that they're kind of preferential. I like to put them because if I'm creating a certain character, like their physicality is going to really matter. I truly believe it matters. So I don't shy away from describing their physicality. And I try to, instead of being super specific in terms of like, he's very in shape, I try to add language that gives a much more contextual idea of who this person is. He has a body of a brute, thick as wood and heavy as stone. That just gives you the impression this man is older. He's lived a harder life. He's a little bit stoic, I guess you could say. Maybe that's not the right word. Okay, so we're going to keep going. The only light in the room is coming from the sink area, just a few feet away from Rick's position. Again, I don't have to, the only light in the room is coming from the sink area, just a few feet away. We're in a motel, so it's like, what's interesting is that when you describe places that you know really well, it's like once you start writing them down to try to like guide your audience, your reader to like what's going on, it gets kind of like, oh, like I would normally call it the bathroom, but in a lot of motels, like the sink and the bathroom are separate. So it's like, do I call that the bathroom? Because I don't want people thinking that the toilet, like you're trying to make sure you get the most precise visual that you want for people. But you also have to like understand that people been in motels, so you don't have to, again, over explain it. The only light in the room is coming from the bathroom area. That's all I should have written there. Just a few feet away from Rick's position, obviously. And typical shifting cues from the muted television off to the side. Again, overriding, but you guys understand exactly. You guys understand that, this isn't going to be perfect. And I think this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this script, because I haven't looked at it in years and I was really curious to see how, I don't want to say amateurish. It was amateur, but I want to choose a better word. How far back my writing was in terms of skill and precision. So it's really interesting to see this. The toilet flushes and a woman exits the bathroom. She's wearing a short skirt and bra with tacky tattoos scattered on her body. It's primarily on her arms and abs. I'm doing a slight little rewrites here. And then here's this one, actually, it's just gaunt. So gaunt is a very specific word. It kind of gives the idea of somebody that's like not necessarily healthy. Let's see. Her name is Stella. Oops. We're just going to keep going. We're going to power through. So Rick gets up and goes to the bathroom. He doesn't. Oh my God. All caps. MF Doom. Rick gets up and goes to the bathroom. Doesn't close the door. Overwriting. As he pisses, Stella plops herself on the bed and watches the TV, still muted. Slight rewriting there because what I just wrote on the original script was dumb. Just in terms of the wording, the way I put it, it was a little overkill. On the TV, there's an old black and white film. It shows a detective grabbing a woman aggressively, Casablanca, and snapping at her. Oh wait, no, that's a different movie. I'm an idiot. I forgot what movie I was referencing here. I don't know why I didn't just put it in the script. So again, error there. That's something you guys can learn. Stella grabs a cigarette from the counter and lights it. So now we're going to get into our first dialogue. So it's funny because the actual end product of this short film is different. The opening is different. For one, Jacob starts outside. He starts exterior motel and he sets up the exterior energy, I guess you could say. Like you get still shots of just that whole motel area, and it actually sets the tone really, really well. And let's see. And then they have this dialogue that I have written here. Jacob cut that out. He didn't have this opening dialogue. But as you can see, we're getting to about half a page or a page of just really kind of just setting the rhythm of the two characters and how they interact with each other. If you consider Jacob adding that exterior motel opening as well, that we go from outside, the nighttime, the sort of like the run, not really run down motel, but the old motel. Then we go inside and we have these two people that clearly have just had sex, but they're completely separate from each other. One's on the bed, one's in the bathroom, and the one on the bed looks tired. He has his head down. You're getting a whole tone of feel for this. So it's really, really important that I always believe you take your time before you get to the dialogue. Just for like a general rule of thumb. We're not going to get too much into it after that because there's obviously a whole lot of instances in which you can start off with dialogue right away, but sorry, there's like dust on this. But yeah, so here we go. You can kind of see how we're building. So opening dialogue. In the software, you're going to have options. You switch to character, you type in character. It's going to be all caps, and then you automatically go into the dialogue. A lot of these software, I shouldn't say a lot, all these software, it's kind of like automatic. So it understands what you're doing as you're typing stuff out. So when you go to start writing dialogue, it automatically picks up on that, and it's like, okay, you're writing dialogue now. So it doesn't, go right back to like the action or general descripts format. And usually there's like double or triple tapping your enter your enter key is going to do that for you as well. Why don't they ever put these old films in color? Rick finishes pissing and rejoins Stella. This is a slight rewrite there. Oh, and I use the tab. So I hit enter and I use tab. And then, that's how I get to character. That's for writer do it. That's not the point. Stella, not the point of what? They did it for Casablanca. Oh, actually, this one doesn't automatically do it. Interesting. I'm so used to just hitting the tab and not even thinking about it. Yeah, okay, all right. My bad. It is what it is, though. Rick. Yeah, and it was shit. Now, one of the things a lot of people get trapped in when they're writing dialogue is like every single response or thing is like almost like a question. You can impose a question at the beginning, but from there you need to just have like an exchange, a conversation. So oftentimes when we have conversations, we make points that build off what other people said. We don't just go back and forth and say questions. And a lot of screenwriters at the start, their dialogue goes back and forth with like question, answer, question. And it's sort of like, it's just because we don't think about conversation dialogue in that way in our normal life. So when you get to it in a script, it's like, oh, this is a lot different than I remember it. So, okay, so there, Rick sits back down in his original spot. He looks over at the TV for a brief moment, then looks over at the counter. Fix that. A wedding ring. So I would actually capitalize this because it's an important element. It's an important thing. That's pretty much like very, very much directly impacting the narrative or the character. So a wedding ring rests on top. He leans up, he grabs it. I'm going to rewrite that. And then Stella, he grabs it. Stella watches him. Now, this is in the short film that Jacob actually shot. This is where it actually starts in terms of like exterior motel. We're inside. Stella's actually coming out of the bathroom, and then when she sits down, he actually like is still like he never goes to the bathroom, and then he messes with his ring, and then this is where the actual first bit of dialogue starts, which I think was really good because the first set of dialogue doesn't really, it's all fluff, and I think that's an important thing to realize is sometimes you got to get a little bit of fluff before you get to like where you're actually going, and you can keep it in there because the beauty of it is that they can always cut it out. It's easier to cut out shit of a script than to add stuff. So just remember that. She says, now, in the original, it says you're going to lose. So for dialogue, most people don't talk like that. You're gonna lose that thing one day. You need to just keep it on. Rick, it bothers me. Stella, what? Like it's too tight? No, Rick. No. Stella. Now, I put a beat in here because that just means the actor needs to make sure they have at least 1 or 2 second pause before they respond. So it's like, without the beat, it's suggested that the dialogue's just going to be like, you're going to lose that thing one day. You need to just keep it on. It bothers me. What, like it's too tight? No. And then she says her next line. So it's like the beat just suggests there's a pause, there's an intentional pause there. And the director and you and like the actor can kind of figure out what is to be accomplished in that. Oh. What difference does it make? You're still screwing around. And as you see, we're being vernacular here. Vernacular, if you're not familiar, is the dialect of communication and speech that is used in a particular region. So like y'all, like I'm from the South, y'all, Y apostrophe ALL, like that's vernacular because technically ain't and y'all ain't words, but they are words. It's our vernacular down there. So you want to make sure that you establish some type of vernacular. It's okay if one character speaks very grammatically correct, but not all of them can. Okay. So this line is important because you want to have, this line may not seem like much, but it's establishing that, uh, he's obviously cheating. We've seen that just based on the wedding ring. But what she's instead of her saying like, what difference does it make? Like, if you're cheating, you're cheating. It's just sort of like her way of wording it in a thing of like, um, being direct with a little bit of like lightness to it. So, Rick, if it's off, at least I'd have it staring back. Can't you still feel it though? Like it's still on your finger. Rick, like a phantom. Yeah, kind of like that. So as you can see here, we do have like some of the question marks going back and forth, but they are justified. I will say that because it's like what she's doing here is she's genuinely trying to like probe him, not sexually, obviously, or maybe she did, but she's generally trying to probe him. When I mentioned earlier, like people using questions back and forth, they're asking questions to things that they fairly already know the answer to. Like the character already knows this answer, but they're still asking it as a question, and that's the thing that a lot of people do when they're screenwriting early on and they're trying to figure out dialogue. So, or they bring up a question that just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's like, okay, why is this person asking this question? But it's just they don't know how to just keep a dialogue going in a cohesive manner. But everything she's asking, she's probing him, and she's trying to figure out like why is it that it bothers you, and you know, you essentially get like he doesn't even really know, like he might know obviously because well he did say he says, I don't have it staring back at me. And so she takes that information and she uses that to pose another question. So she's building off of the information she's giving him. She's not asking anything that's redundant, so to speak. All right. So, oops. Yeah, kind of like that. Okay. Oops. Oh my God. Okay. So Rick doesn't answer. Oh, I remember how this script ended. I was a little pervert. Okay. Sorry. Stella just gives him a cheeky flick of her eyebrows, a little bit of overwriting. Goes back to watching TV. Rick puts on his ring and gets up. He grabs his shirt, starts to put the rest of his clothes on. I put piece by piece. I think that was deliberate to like suggest or recommend like slowly, like milking that scene a little bit. I'm not judging you or anything, Stella. So here I should probably put beat and then I could put pondering. So I can add a little bit more help there. So she takes a moment, she kind of watches him. Actually, that's what I'll put here, even though it's like a rewrite. Stella watches, examines, ponders. I'm not judging you or anything. Another great thing about dialogue is it provides subtext. This line right here suggests that she actually kind of cares a little bit how she makes him feel or how he perceives her. Obviously, I'm just real analytical about shit like that. Rick, were you being analytical when you got those tattoos? So obviously this is a rhetorical question. He's being a dickhead right now in a nice way. Are you trying to get under my skin? You've degraded worse. That's an actual something that a woman who is a real prostitute said to me about one of her experiences where she was talking to me about because I used to do this. This is like probably should have preferenced that. I used to like pay people, not a lot, like 50, $100. If I would meet people or whatever, I would like pay them to like have coffee with me and like talk about like if they were a drug dealer, a gang member, prostitute, or just anything like that. Part of the underbelly, you know. I need to start doing that again because it's really really interesting. But this was like essentially something like that where she's telling me about an experience with one of her Johns, and you know she's just telling me the story, and like this is what she said back to him. So I always remembered that line. Okay, Rick gives her a quick smile and continues to clothe himself. It's a weird way of putting it. He zips up his pants. So I don't need. Okay, so I just start like writing erotica at this point where I'm just like being very. Oh, he puts up his pants. He puts his belt on. I don't need to do that. Tries to make himself presentable. I'll put that. And that's almost like another character subtext here where it's like he just did something very wrong in terms of like the sanctity of his marriage, however you want to word that. So it's like he's trying to like clean, like he's trying to just like, oh, I like present himself as if he didn't do anything wrong. Sits back down, and remains quiet. I put his silence as deafening. That's a little bit of a kind of an overwrite, but I do like it, and you can lean into stuff like that. Turns towards him. You all right? Rick. Beat. I gotta stop this. Stella. Now on the beats, you can also add little things here. I put scoffs. You said that 4 weeks ago and 2 weeks before that. So again, we're getting like a story as they're talking, and this is like a really difficult thing to do. Is how do two characters have a conversation without being super on the nose or expository? But we also get a narrative within that because time when two people know each other, they don't say things that the other person already knows in terms of the conversation. Like they may say something to remind somebody of it, like she's saying right now. Like you said that 4 weeks ago, you said that 2 weeks before that, but like she never directly says like you are cheating on your wife, Rick. How do you think about that? Like that's what a lot of people would write with dialogue. He knows he's cheating on his wife. She knows he is. Like the only time she brought it up was to remind him like, hey, it doesn't matter if you have your ring off or on, you're still screwing around. But you know, so it's sort of like how people talk to each other. It's like they don't state the obvious so obvious. Uh, so it, you know, that's a thing that really really is important. You can put that in there on your first draft, but you got to go back and be like, how can I communicate this without saying having somebody literally say, Rick, you are cheating on your wife, you should feel terrible. I've read scripts that have something pretty much close to the line of that, and it's like they're like final drafts, and it's frustrating. So anyways, I digress. Let's see. Okay, so we got this. Rick rubs in between his eyes. I put like he has a pounding headache. I won't rewrite that. And then you can put, oops, Rick I put long beats, so he's gonna take a while. So like a beat is like 1,001, maybe 1,002. A long beat is like 1,003 to 1,005 seconds, roughly. Rule of thumb. So he has a long beat, and then usually when you do a long beat is because there's gonna be a reveal. There's gonna be some sort of um, like maybe new information. I would say yeah, new information, but I mean you'll see. She knows. I know she knows. I can tell by the way she looks at me. I can hear it in her voice. She tells me she loves me every night. Like she's trying to remind me that I don't gotta be doing this for me to stop before she has to do something about it. She wants it all to just fade away like it never happened. Okay, I'm gonna suck my own dick here and say that's pretty damn good, even all those years ago. Yeah, she knows. I know she knows. I can tell by the way she looks at me. I can hear it in her voice. She tells me she loves me every night, like she's trying to remind me that I don't got to be doing this for me to stop before she has to do something about it. She wants it to just fade away like it never happened. Now, the interesting thing about this, I guess subconsciously, this wasn't so much like a script with like two characters. There's a third character in here, which is his wife. She's made, and I think that's the important thing when you're writing a script is like understand not everybody on the screen makes up the entirety of the cast. There is a third character here, and it's the wife. So how do we introduce the wife into this and give her three dimensions without her just being a conduit between these two people? And so he expresses this about her, and I wanted to have like people to have an image like the way she looks at me, and I feel like people know what that look is, whether they've given that look to somebody that they're dating, and they're like, please just don't, you know, like I know like you're doing something wrong, like or they've received that look. Same thing, like I can hear it in her voice. She's telling me she loves me, and it's sort of like you get the full 3D character. Like she cannot confront him about this, and she's just giving him in every way possible. She's communicating to him to stop this without directly doing it, hoping that he can just receive that information and stop it. And it's like she loves him so much, she's willing to stay with him if he just stops. He just has to stop and just have it all go away. And then it's like she wants to stay with him. And I think in that dialogue, you get that third character that's present, that's spiritually there. And I think that's one of the things that made the script and the end product so well received at film festivals and stuff. So that's important. Like when you have dialogue, like to put images in the people's heads, like when people are expressing certain things, just the way he expressed about his wife, because he could have been like, "Oh, she's angry at me" or whatever, and but you get the full context of it. Now, Stella, if you want a therapist, that's a separate fee. Cold ass bitch, which I like. Rick thinks to himself for a moment. If I stopped calling, would you miss me? Ooh, man, this guy's got some fucking issues. Stella turns to Rick, her face scrunched up with an "Are you kidding me?" look. So that's overriding. I don't need to put that. Then Rick says, "Just answer." Actually, I didn't need to put that. Sorry, I'm thinking too ahead of myself. Turn to Rick, and she looks at him like, "Yeah, are you kidding me?" She's not gonna. And he's like, "No, I want to hear the answer." So you can see here now, like how I'm utilizing sort of body language to communicate things. Like not everything needs to be spoken, and you can have this sort of tug of war with these characters that it's subtle, but it is essentially like a war. It's a conflict. Do you want me to be honest or tell you what you want to hear? Rick, honest. She ponders on it. She ponders on it. Stella. Actually, I think, oh, it says here, ponders on it legitimately. Uh, I would normally not put that. Oh my God, I can't write for anything. But I wanted to emphasize legitimately because she's been kind of like, um, facetious wouldn't be the right word. She's been kind of a dick, not taking him too serious. So at this point, I wanted to make sure that the actor understood and director, like, oh, this is like she's being actually serious here. Because I don't want to get into the room. If I just put she ponders on it, they might just naturally go with, oh, she's not really taking him serious still. A little bit, actually. A little bit, actually. You're one of the better Johns I got. And then I should have added, no, actually, I'll leave it the way it is in the script. But I'd get over it. She turns to him with a smirk. She sits up and lets him gaze at her half-naked body, then crawls over to him and gives him a kiss on the lips. Oh, okay, so this is interesting. What she says here is the end of the script. Okay, so I'm going to tell you how this script originally ended. She kisses him on the lips, which is prostitutes do not do. They really don't. I mean, some do. I know, like some of the ones that I've talked to, it's like if you want to kiss them, like it's like an extra fee. But for the most part, from what I know, is that a lot of prostitutes, it's like no kissing on the lips, right? She kisses him on the lips, so there's this sort of like with your characters, you know, there's always like a dichotomy or a contradiction that people have. Everybody has contradictions within themselves. You can believe two things at once but one can be more true than the other. So here, what kind of adds depth to her character is that, you know, she tells him, okay, yeah, like she takes him at least serious enough to give him a real answer. I'd miss you a little bit. You're one of my better Johns, but I'd get over it. And then immediately she kisses him on the lips, which suggests that she's telling the truth, but there's a deeper feeling that she has about him. And prostitutes have feelings too. They're human beings. Like they're not just these cold, black and white type of figures. Some of them can be, but a lot of them are very complex. They're very gray area. And so that tells you a whole lot about her. So I think that's always a good technique, is to always have an action immediately following something that a character says that challenges what they said, but it doesn't invalidate it. So the way the script ended is that she gives him a kiss on the lips, and then she says, "You ain't never gonna stop, sweetheart, so you might as well keep going." And she starts putting the rest of her clothes on. He reaches into his back pocket and he gets more money out. And you know, like he kind of like she goes to like I think she's getting dressed and she kind of goes to the mirror to kind of tidy up, and he gets money out. He goes up to her and he says, "How much will this get me?" And yeah, and then she makes out with him and she gives him a blowjob. Well, that's the way the way I ended it originally. And then I'm actually not going to spoil the ending because the actual last line of this original script and then what ended up on the screen is exactly the same. But the way that it changes from this point is kisses him on the lips. She actually doesn't do that. So in the short film, the actual short film, she says, "But I'd get over it." I believe she gets up and she goes to the bathroom. Then he gets up and no, he goes to the bathroom. I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place. She says that he gets up and goes out to the bathroom and tidies up, and then she approaches him from the back in the mirror, and she starts to kind of like caress him, and then he pulls money out and says, "What can this get me?" And then she says that line. She kisses him and she says, you're never gonna leave." So that's how it ended. And then the final image of the film stays the same as radio, which I'm not going to write here because I would like for you guys to go watch the short film. But essentially, I'm going to write it as is, and then you can kind of see how we build to a conclusion. So, Stella, you ain't never gonna stop, sweetheart. So you will keep going. And then Stella gets up and starts to put the rest of the clothes on. Rick gets up and walks over to the sink. Oh no, it is that one. I did do some rewrites, so I'm not sure exactly what version it is. He turns on water. So I would just put, he goes over the sink and washes his face. He stares at himself in the mirror. Classic generic mirror shot, trying to peek into his soul or whatever is left of it. That's a pretty solid line for being an amateur. His focus goes from himself to Stella and her alluring presence with the way she moves. Yeah, with the way she moves, even doing the most mundane task, putting clothes on. So the reason why I put that in there is because she is intentionally trying to like seduce him again. So it's not so much like she's just so like magnetic that he just can't. It's like she's doing this intentionally. That's some subtext there. Rick reaches into his back pocket and pulls out his wallet. So I would just put Rick pulls his wallet out and digs some cash out. He looks back at Stella. I do some major fucking overwriting here. Rick watches his face, and I'm just going to do some rewrite when he dries himself off with the towel. He notices Stella standing behind him, watching him. She turns him around gently. Takes the cash, shows it. Rick, what can this get me? And that is like he kind of knows what it will, but it's like a game, you know. Stella takes the money, of course. She grabs and pulls him close to her, kisses him passionately, which is important. He succumbs to her spell. Rick is gone. He's fallen for good. That's a rewrite. That's not a good rewrite. He takes off his ring, and that's where we're going to start. That's where we're going to stop because it ends pretty much there. There's one line left. But you have to see the ending. Hopefully, at least one of you watch it. But yeah, that's essentially a short film. That's what we wrote. It's 4 pages. 4 pages, and I did cut out some fat. There's some like it's 5 pages on the original, but I condensed some things down that I rewrote because I definitely did some overwriting. But that's essentially how you get a flow for things. There's a beginning, a middle, and end. You know, the first part is we're seeing the characters and we're establishing their relationship. And I think this is kind of where the lesson is going to be. So there's 3 things to generally consider. You can consider more, but this is a really good thing for beginners. This was something taught that I learned from Harrison Ford's early like American Graffiti days acting coach. And I'm an idiot that I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he said there's essentially 3 things that actors or that a scene requires. And it's like you have to answer one of these 3 things. It's like establishing the relationship between the characters, assessing, revisiting, or reestablishing the relationship between the 2 characters, or the characters are there to do their job. So their job obviously isn't necessarily like their job. It's like, what is the job of this character through this narrative? So we essentially have that through these aspects of the narrative. So in the opening scene, we're establishing their relationship. And after we get past that, we establish the relationship. Now it's like Rick is reassessing his relationship with his wife and his relationship with the prostitute. She is essentially kind of doing that, but she's more or less doing her job. Like the whole time, she is doing her job. She's not really reassessing his relationship with her. She's there to do her job, which is to keep him around. You know, take the prostitution aside. Her job is to keep this man on the hook. And then at the end of what would be considered the 3rd act, after we've had this reassessment of all that, where his marriage, he's examining his marriage, reassessing revisiting his relationship with her, especially with the question of, would you miss me if I stopped calling? Then at the end, it's like the main thing is that she has to do her job. That is like where that is. So she does her job. And, and in a sense, you could say Rick is also supposed to do his job, but he fails at it fucking miserably. So with those aspects of it, we have a very tight 3-act structure, beginning, middle, and end. The climax, so to speak, is where the buildup is them, sort of like addressing the main conflict here, which is his infidelity, his unfaithfulness, and then the climax is sort of when she makes a move to keep him around, and then we have our conclusion of that, the result. So that is it. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Oh my God, 54 minutes. Sheesh. That's a long thing, but hopefully you guys got a good amount out of this. Again, on the description, I'm going to put links to Jacob's Instagram and website, and then obviously I'm going to put a link to the short film, so you guys can watch it, enjoy it. It is his first short film. Audio is a little bit messy, but I think it actually adds character to it. But yeah, it's thank you guys if you stuck around this entire time. This can kind of give you an idea of just the general process and creative thinking of writing a script, particularly a short film. I highly recommend you start with short films, get into the rhythm, work on writing scenes like this and moments like this that I think a good rule of thumb is it comes off as a really cool scene of a bigger movie, but by itself it works as a story by itself. So if you kind of hit that happy hybrid, you'll be on your way to start learning how to write really good feature length scripts eventually. So thank you guys for your patience. We're gonna have another general, not a regular video next week of from the studio. That should be good. We're filming more stuff on the 30th and 31st, I think. And yeah, we're gonna keep it pushing. Thank you guys for following the Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube, and that's really the only two things: YouTube, Instagram, the website. I'm still building the website to really offer you guys more stuff. Yeah, thank you. Bing bong.